So how are organizations transforming? Well, let's talk about the problem. The first and biggest problem is that organizations aren't doing this quickly enough. And this is evidenced not just by this one specific work trend index, but many different studies. So we see bring your own AI as a really dominant trend right now in the industry. And that's because of a failure of organizations, and I want to be really clear with my words, it's a failure of organizations to respond and responsibly enable an alternative pathway that's supported by the organization to achieve the same outcomes. So if you are an organization and you have Copilot for Microsoft 365 and it's available to anyone in the organization because they can do team-based nomination and a bunch of other techniques, then you're in an organization where, yes, you might have bring your own AI, but the risk is greatly mitigated because your core AI tooling and investments are available. But there are many organizations that are still in, we'll call it technical readiness prep. They're hesitating to deploy it or certainly enabling it at scale. And these are problems because if they don't do that, it's not like people aren't going to see the value their competitors or peers or industry colleagues are doing and not bring that to their own organizations for the right reasons. So what's the problem here? These are the numbers of the people who bring their own AI tools to work, not provided by their organization. And this is a problem. And look, there's a lot of tools in just Microsoft alone, right? So these are all Copilot technologies TutorLead works with. And so we have been in lots of these types of projects, right? Helping customers deploy and understand all these things. And this is an out-of-date picture. This is from July. And I know there's 3, like Copilot for Finance is not on here. I have Finance, but not Copilot specifically for it. There's a bunch of things that need to be illustrated on this. So this is a rapidly changing space, exponentially changing. And it's one where we need to do better as organizations to drive this faster. So what do we do? Well, of course, you can do technical readiness work. There was a webinar we did a little while ago, still very accurate and relevant. So if you haven't taken a look at it, go look at that. It's about an hour long. It'll explain this. The trick here is to understand that within around a 4-week time frame, you can remediate the most urgent issues and actually assess and prepare a proper rollout, not just a POC, but a rollout, a pilot of Copilot for Microsoft 365. This can be done for very, very large organizations in a short amount of time. And of course, for smaller organizations, it might be easier. So 4 weeks is what you need minimum. And that means that if you're starting next week, you're 4 weeks past that before you can really start to scale this. And that's why I'm saying the urgency needs to be real illustrated, because even this data that I was highlighting is months old. All right. So let's talk about another aspect of this, which is the business readiness. So let's say you get your technical readiness done, you get your DLP implemented, you manage your security posture, and now you're able to responsibly empower people to use these tools. At this point, we need to understand the business side of it. How do we be successful there? And again, there's an hour-long talk. I highly encourage you to go look at this one. But for simplicity, I'll highlight the value pieces of this particular webinar, why it relates to value rapidly for you here. The first one to understand is that the way you roll out something like Copilot or these AI tools is that you have to understand that they're not impacting one type of outcome. It's not just productivity or quality measures. It's that it impacts the organization, its culture, has tangible impacts to teams and processes, and of course on individuals. And these are all things that should correlate into how you manage this change. Another way of looking at this is when you think about how you review success for a deployment and enablement of Copilot, it's not really just about turning it on responsibly and avoiding risk. It's about making sure that it's starting to drive measurable impact in these different categories. And remember, all of these categories are valued by different people in the organization in different ways. And so again, this is a really important thing to stress. We want to talk about value and the value AI provides, because that's how we're going to create shared understanding to lead towards shared commitment for our organizations and us as leaders, perhaps within those organizations. The other way to think about this is that there's this concept of scenarios that's often brought up. In the earlier planning of Copilot, you'll typically come up with some scenarios that you're tracking over the course of your deployment. And this isn't just for Copilot, this could be Gemini, it could be any system. And the idea generally is that you come up with your processes that you think will be changed in some meaningful way through the usage of AI, through generalized digital assistants like Copilot. And then you essentially map how it might do that, how it might affect KPIs that you're already measuring, and how you might be able to illustrate that. That's what scenario planning is. And you do it typically at the very beginning of these projects as part of business readiness. However, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they do that just for Copilot for Microsoft 365, and they forget about all the other AI stack experiences, or things like extending Copilot, or SharePoint Premium, which is for document processing. There's so many other scenarios that you need to think about here. And I'm not saying I want to make every Copilot project like enormous. What I'm saying is spending a tiny amount of time focusing on the value and how that value might be exponentially or significantly increased by the usage of Copilot adjacent technologies or arguably other AI technologies that are in your Microsoft stack or you may already own, is a well worthwhile exercise, because then you're aligning your sense of value so you can better communicate it to end users, better track it, and of course, better discuss and dialogue this internally. So again, these kinds of simplified visuals can make a difference. And then typically we pick like a few of these things, we kind of diamond mark them and say, these are the ones we're going to focus on, for year one or whatever it is. And you just keep kind of revisiting this year over year or twice a year, and you're in a good place from an AI strategy perspective.